Quiet is the last thing you expect from a currency story. We are conditioned to watch for headlines, to wait for official announcements, to track the dramatic moments when a government steps to a podium and declares a new economic era. But the most significant shifts in monetary history do not arrive with fanfare. They arrive in the details that nobody reads, in the interviews that nobody watches all the way through, and in the data points that get buried beneath the next breaking news cycle. Iraq is approaching a currency turning point right now, not because the exchange rate changed today, not because the central bank made a sudden announcement, but because every single structural element that determines the long-term value of a currency is quietly, methodically, irreversibly falling into place, and most people are completely missing it. Let me take you inside the interview that Governor Ali Al-Awlaq gave to Rudaw on February 10. On the surface, this interview sounded like bad news for anyone hoping for a dinar revaluation. Al-Awlaq stated flatly that the central bank is not studying the topic of changing the exchange rate. He called market speculation great confusion and misplaced. He dismissed any link between the budget deficit and currency adjustment as an incorrect link. To the casual observer, this is a denial. To the trained observer, this is the most important confirmation you will ever receive. Al-Awlaq did not say the rate is fixed forever. He did not say the rate reflects the true value of the currency. He said the central bank is not currently studying a change. That is a statement about the present, not the future. And more importantly, he spent the rest of that interview describing, in extraordinary detail, exactly what the central bank is doing. And what they are doing is building the foundation that will support a fundamentally different currency value. Let me give you the numbers that matter. Al-Awlaq revealed that Iraq's foreign reserves now exceed $100 billion, including more than 76 tons of gold. The money supply stands at approximately 100 trillion dinars, but here is the number that should stop you cold. More than 80% of that money supply exists outside the banking system. 80%. Trillions of dinars circulating in the shadow economy, invisible to tax authorities, unavailable for productive lending, and entirely beyond the reach of monetary policy. This is not a sign of a healthy economy. This is a sign of systematic evasion. And Al-Awlaq was remarkably candid about the cause, primarily linked to the phenomenon of tax evasion and non-disclosure of revenue levels, profits and income that are achieved, especially in the trade sector. This is the battle that Prime Minister Soudani and Governor Al-Awlaq are fighting, not against the parallel market rate, which is merely a symptom, but against the structural corruption that has allowed 80% of the currency to operate outside formal channels. Now, let me connect this to what is happening on the ground in Baghdad right now. On February 8th, hundreds of traders and customs clearance company owners protested in central Baghdad. They gathered outside the General Customs Directorate, chanting slogans against corruption and rejecting new fees. They shut down markets and stores across the capital. They hung banners reading "Customs fees are killing citizens." The new tariffs that triggered these protests range from 5% to 30%. Traders report that container fees have jumped from around 3 million dinars to as much as 14 million. Infant milk fees rose from about 495,000 dinars to nearly 3 million. To the casual observer, this looks like a policy failure. It looks like a government imposing burdens that the economy cannot bear. But listen to what the protesters are not saying. They are not demanding the Asacuta system be improved. They are not asking for better implementation. They are demanding the system be cancelled entirely. They are demanding a return to the old way, the way where goods could be undervalued, duties evaded, and dollars siphoned out of the country. The Director General of the Iraqi General Customs Authority, Thamer Qasim, made this explicit. He stated that those affected are traders operating outside the customs and tax systems, as their financial transfers are not registered in the Asacuta system and they lack tax Accountability. He emphasized that entry into Asakuta requires both an import license and a tax. Identification. The government is not targeting innocent merchants, it is targeting operators who have been evading taxes and moving money outside the formal system. And it is doing so with a tool that makes evasion impossible. The Asakuta electronic platform provides accurate, real-time information, eliminates estimation and human interference, and contributes to combating money laundering. Now, let me address the external dimension that the dinar community often misunderstands. Since November, Iraqi banks have had to comply with SWIFT international transfer system criteria to access their foreign reserves held at the U.S. Federal Reserve. Muzaffar Saleh, a financial advisor to the Prime Minister, explained that Iraqi banks must now register dollar transfers on an online platform that reviews every request. The Federal Reserve examines these requests, and if there are any suspicions about the final destination, it stops the transfer. Since this mechanism was adopted, the Federal Reserve has blocked about 80% of transfer requests due to doubts over where the money was actually going. 80%. This is not the United States weaponizing the dollar against Iraq. This is the United States finally enforcing long-standing anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing provisions that Iraq's previous governments were too weak, too corrupt, or too complicit to enforce themselves. Economist Ahmed Tabakali said it plainly, contrary to current misconceptions, rumors, and misinformation, there is no evidence of U.S. pressure on Iraq. The new regulations require high levels of disclosure and transparency. This came as a shock for many of our banks, who were not used to this. Sudanese government is not fighting the new regulations, it is embracing them. It is using them as cover to do what previous governments lacked the political capital to do: clean up the banking sector, force compliance with international standards, and starve the parallel economy of the dollars that sustained it. Now, let me give you another data point that the mainstream coverage is ignoring. The U.S. Energy Information Administration announced that Iraq exported nearly 5 million barrels of crude oil to the United States during February. While this is down from 6.3 million barrels in January, it still represents a significant volume and average of 257,000 barrels per day in the first week, 128,000 in the second, and 170,000 in the fourth. Why does this matter? Because oil exports to the United States represent hard currency revenue that flows directly into Iraq's foreign reserves. Every barrel sold strengthens the central bank's ability to defend the currency. Every dollar earned increases the reserves that Iraq described as at a very comfortable level. And every transaction conducted through official channels reinforces the compliance infrastructure that Iraq is building. Now, let me take you deeper into Iraq's interview, because buried in his answers is the philosophical core of Sudanese entire strategy. When asked about the money supply outside banks, Iraq said, if money owners feel reassured about the existence of a fair and transparent tax system, they will bring their money and deposit it in banks. Reassurance, that is the word. The entire reform agenda: customs unification, banking consolidation, electronic transfer monitoring, tariff enforcement. All export compliance is aimed at one thing: reassuring the holders of that 80% that the system is now fair, transparent, and safe. When that reassurance takes hold, when the shadow economy begins to trust the formal economy, the 80% will start flowing into banks. That inflow of deposits will expand the lending capacity of the banking system. That expanded lending will fuel investment and consumption. That investment and consumption will drive economic growth. And that economic growth will be the fundamental foundation for a stronger currency. This is why the protests in Baghdad are so significant. The traders are not protesting because the tariffs are too high. They are protesting because the tariffs are finally being collected. They are not demanding the Asakuta system be cancelled because it is inefficient. They are demanding it be cancelled because it is effective. They are not losing money because the exchange rate is unfair. They are losing money because the arbitrage window, the gap between the official rate they claimed and the parallel rate they actually used, has been slammed shut. The Federal Supreme Court understood this when it dismissed a legal challenge against the customs tariff decision, citing the absence of legitimate interests. The tariff hike stands. The Asacuta system continues. The government is not backing down. Now, let me address the parallel market rate that continues to dominate headlines. The official rate is set at 1,320 dinars per dollar. The parallel market trades around 1,500 to 1,570 dinars. This gap has caused real pain for ordinary Iraqis. Saad Altai, a retiree who helps his son run a small shop in Baghdad's Karada district, described it as a real problem. When the dollar was valued at 1,470 dinars, his pension was worth $336. At the current parallel rate of 1,570, his pension is worth $314. This is real. This is painful. This is the human cost of the transition. But it is also temporary. Alak described the currency fluctuation as a temporary situation, and the government has taken measures to stabilize the exchange rate, including facilitating dollar trade in the private sector through Iraqi banks and opening foreign exchange outlets at state-owned banks for those wishing to travel abroad. More importantly, the cabinet has decided to oblige all state bodies to sell goods and services in Iraq in dinars at the central bank's exchange rate of 1,320 to the dollar. This is not a small measure. This is the government using its immense purchasing power to reinforce the official rate and starve the parallel market of transactions. Saleh argued that these measures are important as they show that the state is there to protect the market and citizens. And he is right. The state is not abandoning the currency. The state is building the infrastructure that will ultimately support it. Now, let me give you one more piece of evidence that the turning point is approaching. On February 13th, Prime Minister Soudani chaired a meeting of the Industrial Coordination Council, attended by the Ministers of Finance, Oil, Trade, Industry, and Health. The meeting approved the use of specialized berths at Kher al-Zubair port to operate a sponge iron plant at its designed production capacity. It approved moving forward with preparations to offer an investment opportunity for the establishment of an industrial city at Al-Sawarisai in Wasit Governorate. It formed a team to identify brick factories capable of transitioning to liquefied gas use. These are not glamorous headlines. They are the gritty, technical, unglamorous work of building an industrial base. But they are precisely the kind of developments that signal a government serious about its economic future. A government that cannot manage industrial policy cannot be trusted to manage monetary policy. A government that cannot coordinate across ministries cannot maintain currency stability. Soudani is building the administrative capacity that a sovereign currency requires. This is what the turning point looks like. It does not look like a fireworks display. It looks like a customs system that finally works. It looks like a banking sector that finally complies with international standards. It looks like an industrial base that finally begins to diversify away from oil. It looks like 80% of the currency slowly, painfully, inevitably flowing from the shadows into the light. The exchange rate will change when the infrastructure is ready. The revaluation will come when the parallel economy is integrated. The dinar will rise when the system that suppresses it has been dismantled. Alak was honest about this. When asked about changing the exchange rate, he said such a decision would only be considered if Iraq faced an inability to meet demand for foreign currency due to weak reserves. And he explicitly stated that this is not the case at the present time. Not the case at the present time. But the present time is not the future. The present time is the preparation. The present time is the reform. The present time is the quiet before the storm. The traders protesting in Baghdad are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of success. The 80% of currency outside banks is not evidence of a weak economy. It is evidence of an opportunity. The parallel market rate is not evidence of a collapsing currency. It is evidence of a dying system. Iraq is approaching a currency turning point, not because someone announced it, not because a headline declared it, but because the fundamentals are finally, quietly, inexorably aligning. The customs system is working, the banking sector is consolidating, the Federal Reserve is certifying compliance, the industrial base is expanding, the reserves are comfortable, the gold is accumulating, the political will is holding. Every single one of these signals points to the same conclusion. The old Iraq, the Iraq of smuggled goods and evaded taxes and illicit dollars and parallel markets, is dying. And in its place, a new Iraq is being born. An Iraq where 80% of the currency is inside the banking system, not outside it. An Iraq where dollars flow through monitored channels, not black market exchanges. An Iraq where the official rate and the real rate are the same rate. That Iraq is not here yet. The transition is still underway. The traders are still striking. The containers are still stalled. The pensions are still shrinking. But the direction is clear. The turning point is approaching, and when it arrives, the dinar will finally reflect the nation it actually represents. The question is whether you will be watching when it does.